The father dropped his first grader off early at school and headed to work in the midst of the storm. He told his son the same thing he told him every morning: I love you and I'll be back. Halfway to his job, the father heard that a tornado had just hit his son's school. Turning his truck around, he sped back towards the building. When he got there, what he saw brought him to tears. What once was a building filled with children and teachers was now a massive pile of rubble. The father ran over to where his son's class would have been if the building had been standing. Not knowing what to do, the father began to yell out his son's name over and over and over again. After 2 minutes of yelling, the father heard a faint reply. It was his son yelling back to his father. The father ran to the spot where he had heard the voice, and he began to dig and to sort rubble. And as he was doing that, he clearly heard his son tell another child, "Hey, I told you that my dad would come for me." With the help of others, the father finally opened up a hole where his son and the other children could come out. They had been in class when the alarm went off, and they ran into the closet in the room, and that's what protected them. That's what saved them. Later, when the father had the son, he asked him about what he had said to the other child. And the son replied, "I knew that you would come back for me because you always do." That's an amazing story, isn't it? Now, I heard it many years ago, and I cannot remember if it's a true story or if it was something somebody made up for an illustration. But it is an amazing story. Last week, we began a sermon series entitled To Stand and to Thrive. And the series focuses on the three foundational gifts that God gives us that are found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. And so we're going to take a moment and read that, but we're going to do it a little differently today. I want everybody to read together out loud. Okay? Now, I know that I use the ESV, and I know that some of you use different versions of the Bible. And so to help you out, if you want to read what I'm reading, if you pull up the slide, Jason, there is the verse from my version of the Bible. So we're going to read it together, all right? Now, I want you to know, no pressure, but the first service did a really excellent job of reading together. So, all right, so here we go. Let me find it in my Bible because I'm blind. Here we go. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love. Let's try that again. I think I started off kind of fast. Sorry about that. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Faith, hope, and love, ladies and gentlemen, are the foundational gifts because they are what we are to do in order to stand on and thrive in Christ. You know, last week we looked at that Jesus is our foundation. And we use these three foundational gifts in order to stand upon Him and to thrive with Him in life. Now, last week we looked at the greatest of the three, and that is the gift of love. We are to love as Jesus loves, as defined by God, who is love. We are to love as Jesus loves, as defined by God, because He is love. So, accountability question. How well did you love others this week? How well did you love like Jesus this week? How well did you love your neighbors, your co-workers, your classmates, your teammates? The loud person, obnoxious person at Walmart in the checkout line. How well did you love like Jesus this week? Think about that. Now, we also compared the three foundational gifts to concrete mix. We said that love is the mix that provides the strength and the structure to the mix. It's the concrete part. This morning, we're going to look at the sand and water portions of the mix because you need sand and water to make concrete like it usable so that it dries and makes a solid foundation. So this morning, we're looking at the sand and the water, and that is faith and hope. Faith and hope. The story that we began with is a great picture of biblical faith and hope. The story of the Father and His Son. That is a great picture of biblical faith and hope. In order for faith and hope to be effective in our lives, we need to truly understand God's definition of both. And we will define faith and hope this morning. And just like love, I'm only going to be brief because we could spend weeks and months on these two words alone. So we're just going to be brief, hit the highlights, show what the true definitions are to help us in our walk with Christ. Now, also, we're going to continue our trend of examining these in reverse order. So the first gift we're going to look at is hope. Last week we looked at love, which is the last gift mentioned, so we're going to look at hope. What is hope? Well, usually when we refer to hope, we are referring to wishful thinking or a chance that will go our way. Let me rephrase that. Or say that again. When we usually refer to hope today, it is wishful thinking or a chance that will go our way. Now, let me give you an example of this. How many of you like to watch game shows? Anybody? It can be anything, like the Great British Baking Show that Miss Shelley and I watch all the time, or the news show that Steve and I have been talking about, I Can See Your Voice, where you have to guess if the person is a good singer or a bad singer, but they don't really sing for you. See what I'm saying? The contestants are wishful thinkers. I hope I win. I hope I get this right. I'm taking a chance, and so I hope I win this contest. As I have seen and you have seen on game shows, people win and people lose, right? That's wishful thinking. Wishful thinking. Well, just a minute. So many times we Christians claim hope in God, but it's more like wishful thinking. Oh, I hope God heals my mother or my father. I hope God gives me what I'm wishing for, that I want. I hope God lets the sun come up so I don't have to deal with the rain tomorrow. But that is how we treat God. That is how we hope. It is a hope of wishful thinking. And the sad thing is, when God doesn't live up to our hope, our expectation, what usually happens is it weakens our faith and our resolve to follow Jesus. It weakens our faith and our resolve to follow Jesus. Folks, wishful thinking type of hope is a false hope. It's a false hope. Most atheists become atheists because they believed in a man-created God. They put their hope in that God, and when that God did not meet up with their expectations, they said, oh, that's it, God's not real. It was all wishful thinking and a wishful God. But we, a lot of times, think of our hope as a wishful thinking. Oh, I hope this happens. I hope that happens. I hope I get the new PS4 5 for Christmas. I hope that my Christmas tree doesn't burn down. We have those hopes. This past Thanksgiving, I saw lots of pictures. I have lots of friends who fry their turkeys. Drop them in the vat, fry, And what's really amazing is the top number one injury on Thanksgiving Day is turkey frying burns, where the stuff explodes up and burns the person cooking. So you got to think that anybody who ever does that is thinking, I hope this doesn't come out of this pot until I pull it out. Is that the way we're treating God? Is that the kind of hope that we practice? Just wishful thinking? If you are, then you have a false hope, and it's going to disappoint you. So if true hope is not wishful thinking, then what is it? Well, Romans 8, chapter 8, verses 24 and 25, Paul says this, "For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope." So if you're saying, hey, I wish I get that PS5 for Christmas, and you've already seen it in your house, hidden by your parents somewhere, then that's not really hope, right? You're just playing a game. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. See the catch there? If it's wishful thinking, we could think, oh, I hope this happens, and then just go about our business and not really think about it or pray about it or seek it out. But if it's the hope that God gives us, then we're going to wait. We're going to be patient. Hebrews 11:7 tells us this: by faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Ladies and gentlemen, I love how gotquestions.org defines hope. True biblical hope is confident expectation, a firm assurance regarding things that are unclear and unknown. A confident expectation, a firm assurance regarding things that are unclear and unknown. I mean, think about Noah. Noah had been warned by God that it was going to flood. Now, why is that such a big deal? Because up to this point, it had never flooded on the planet at all. There was no such thing as a flood. They didn't know what that was. And God tells Noah, hey, I'm going to flood this earth, and I want you to build a boat. What's that? A boat. Just build it, and I'm going to save your family. And so Noah built the ark. Now, he didn't build it in a day or 2 days. It was several years as he was building this thing. But he had hope. He was confident and assured that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. And he was right. Biblical hope is the firm assurance that God will do what he says he will do. Our hope rests on the work and promises of Christ. It rests on the work and promises of Christ, ladies and gentlemen. Things that are done, things that are sure, things that are true, things that we can hang our hats on and know that it's not going to fall to the ground. Those things we can have hope in. That's where our hope should come from. This hope is rooted in faith and love. True hope is the result of loving someone and trusting them in everything. Now, I shared a story in the first service. I'm going to share it again. I'm going to embarrass my wife a little bit, not intentionally. But yesterday we decorated our house. Now, in our neighborhood, we were the last family on the street. Everybody in our neighborhood was already decorated before Thanksgiving even came about. You know, our former neighbors who now live just up the street from us, they win the decorating contest in our neighborhood every year. I mean, every year they win it. Oh, Sean won again, yay! You know, so they win it every year. So I saw his wife on Monday at Weiss, and I said, hey, are y'all decorating? And she goes, yeah, Sean's about to finish with it just now. Not even after Thanksgiving yet. So our family was a little behind in the decorating department, you know. So we have fake trees because most of us are allergic to real ones. And so my job is to build them. So I take them out of the box and I stack them up, you know. Shelley's job is to flock them. Now, if you don't know what flocking means, that means to make the tree look bushy and pretty and all that fun stuff. That's what it means. She's great at it. She does a great job every year. I know, I have hope in her, confidence that she will do the job and do it right. Unlike one of my sons who said, why don't we just put all the ornaments on one side of the tree so they can form at a 45-degree angle? We didn't want to do that. But I have hope. And the reason I have this hope in Shelley because I love her and I trust her. True hope comes out of love and faith and trust. It's like I said last week, all three of these foundational gifts go together. You cannot take one away from the other. Just like you can only, if you just put water and cement together, it's not going to be very good. If you just put water and sand, you're going to sink. You cannot separate these three. True hope is the confidence and assurance that God is going to do what He says He will do. And we have that hope because we love Him and we trust Him. We can be confident that God will keep His promises. We can be confident that He will never leave us or forsake us. We can be confident that He is working even when we can't see it. I mean, think about the video we just saw for Lottie Moon. The girl was forced out of her country. She had to go to a city not knowing what was going on, but she still believed that God was working, and God gave her an opportunity to connect with the church of people from the country she had just left and to be a part of their discipling. God is working. Even if your relative is not getting better, God is working. Even if they don't even heal them and they die, God is still working. We have to have that hope, that confidence. God is working. And in His working, He's going to do it for His glory and our good. He's going to do it for His glory and our good. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to stop flipping the two. We need to think, oh, God's working for my good all the time. Well, actually, we're just the secondary person in that list. He is first. He is working for His glory. Everything He does is for His glory first. We're second. We need to stop making it about us and make it about Him. Yes, awesome, we get the benefits of that. But it's about Him first. We can be assured that God has prepared a place for His people in heaven, and He will bless and provide for those who follow Him. He will bless and provide for those who follow Him. So, question time. Do you have biblical hope? Do you have confident expectation and firm assurance that God will do what He says He will do? If you don't, today is the day to choose to have this hope and then to stand on it. Choose to have this hope and then stand on it. You will never fall. You will never fall if you choose to stand on it. Now, that leads us to our last gift, because you need concrete, you need sand, and you need the water. And without the water, you can't mix the two others. Well, you could, but it just makes a mess. So we need this last gift, and this last gift is faith. Faith. Now, you may have noticed that I brought a chair up on stage today. You know that sitting in a chair is an act of faith. You know that, right? Sitting in a chair is an act of faith. How many of you have ever had a chair pulled out from under you as you were sitting down? I admit it, I've had it done. You know, I know some of you may be embarrassed that that happened, but you know, it happens. And so you're kind of, next time you go, you're kind of tentative to sit down in that chair. Not because the chair is going to break, because somebody's going to pull it away. You know, you're kind of tentative. Or you grab it real quick. Ha ha ha, you're not going to get it for me. But sitting in a chair is an act of faith. And so I'm going to show you, but first I need to tell you some things before I get to that point. As I have said before, we are living in a world that likes to change the definitions of words to best suit them. In fact, I saw an example of that this week watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, if we can call it a parade. There was changing of definitions, including the word love and hope throughout the show. You may or may not have caught it, but I did. But the world likes to change the definitions of words to benefit them. And so some of those words include love and goodness and hope and peace and many other words. And the reason they change these words is so they don't have to be held accountable to Jesus. Yeah. They don't have to, if they change the definition, they think, well, I'm in control now, so I don't have to answer to God. I can do what I want to. That's why they change the definition, because they want to be on the throne. That's why we change definitions sometimes, because we want to be on the throne. And so they change the definitions. Well, where faith is concerned, the definition has been changed, but sadly, it's not the world that's changed it, it's us. It's the church. The church has taken the word faith, and we've changed the definition of what God tells us it is. A lot of times we like to define faith as simply a belief, just a belief. Or we add it to the false hope, the wishful thinking. And the reason we do that is so that we can do as we please in the church. We change the word so that we can get God to do what we ask Him to do. But folks, God doesn't roll that way. He doesn't work that way. Faith is the most important characteristic you can have because it is the key to pleasing God. It is the key to pleasing God. We cannot please God without faith. Hebrews 11:6 says this, and without faith it is impossible to please Him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot please God unless we have faith in God. And it's more than just a belief, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said last week, we can serve in the band at church. We can teach a Sunday school class. We can take food to our neighbors. We can do all kinds of things in the church. But if we are not doing it in faith, God doesn't care. It means nothing to Him. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Whatever you do in life without faith, God sees it as sin. So if I'm standing up here and I'm preaching or teaching and I'm not doing it in faith, I'm sinning. If Steve is up here leading in worship and music and he's not doing it in faith, he is sinning. If you're sitting at home reading your Bible and all you're trying to do is just get through it and you're not doing it in faith, you're sinning. The Bible is very clear about that. If we want to please God, we've got to have faith. We've got to do everything in faith. And folks, if we're not doing it in faith, God is not going to bless us. He's not going to do a major, exciting thing in your life. So if you're wondering why God's not answering your prayers and He's not moving in your life, the problem may be that you just don't have faith. You know what's crazy? You only need the faith the size of a mustard seed to get God to respond. A mustard seed. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? It's like teeny tiny. I can't even make it that big with my fingers. It's tiny. And yet, we see church after church, Christian after Christian fall away, close their doors because they lacked faith. Now, again, just like love and hope, we have to live in faith by God's definition of the word faith. Not our own definition, God's definition. And this faith has three components. Now, I apologize to Ayan and Sarah Lynn. Sorry, I saw Haley. Sarah Lynn this morning, because we actually went over these three components a few weeks ago on Wednesday. And we actually played a recipe game with it, but I did not bring the cards, guys. I'm sorry. No recipe games today. I know you're all adults are like, man, why can't we play a recipe game? You know what I'm saying? But there are three components to biblical faith. And the first component is this. We must believe. We must believe. Hebrews 11:6. And without faith it is impossible to please Him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him. Now, let's go back to the chair. I believe that this chair will support me. If I sit in it, it's not going to collapse or break or fall apart. It's going to support me. That's my belief. I can sit in that chair and nothing's going to happen, except it's going to support me. I believe that. We must believe in the real and genuine God of the Bible. And we must believe in all of Him, not just the parts we like about Him. So if we believe that God is a God of love, we also have to believe that He is a God of wrath. If He is a God of blessing, we also have to believe that He is a God of curse. We must believe in the real and genuine God. I know we can't see Him. I know we can't touch Him. But He is real. He is real. And He is moving all over this world. And I hope He's moving in here today. If we only believe what we want to believe about Him or in a God that we create, we do not have real faith. And folks, do you have a created God, a God that you've pieced together throughout your life from various things, various teachers, various comments, various experiences? Or do you know the real, true God? The God of the Bible. The God that doesn't make human sense sometimes. Because again, we're trying to think with our finite brains compared to His infinite brain. But what do you believe about God? What do you believe about God? Number 2, we must trust. We must trust. Faith requires us to trust. Proverbs 3:5-6 says this, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make straight your paths." Trust in the Lord. Now, let's go back to the chair. I believe it can hold me, but do I trust it? Do I trust it to hold me? Well, let's check it out. All right, seems sturdy enough, right? Seems sturdy enough. It didn't collapse when I pushed on it or shook it around, So it seems like I can trust it. Well, how about God? Once we believe in God, we must then trust Him. And not just with one thing or two things, with everything. Every teeny tiny little thing about our lives we need to trust Him with. Even when it's not going the way we want it to. Even when our candidate doesn't win the election, or our candidate does win the election, or when the person we love doesn't get well. We need to trust God. Are you trusting God with your worries? Are you trusting God with your stress? Are you trusting God with your addiction? Are you trusting God with your children, with your wife, with your husband, with your parents? Are you trusting God on the way to work tomorrow? Are you trusting God with every little thing? And ladies and gentlemen, the thing about trust is not the trust in the results, but the trust in the person. Going back to my wife and I, she may do something I don't like how it's done. There's the people who control things to the extreme. I'm not one of them. But, we control things to the extreme, and we want things done a certain way. Mainly because that's how, we've always learned, or that's always worked for us. But then my wife wants the same results, but she does it a different way. One that I'm not familiar with. One that I'm, kind of seems strange to me. But I still trust her for the results because I believe in her and I love her, and I know that she's going for the same thing I'm going for. One of the funniest things in my house is I feed the dog differently than they do. Our dog is a combination of dry, wet food. And so I put the wet in first and then the dry. Everybody else does dry then wet. It's like the toilet paper under over. You know what I'm saying? But it's still the same results. And they still trust me to do that, even though I make it explode all the time. But are we trusting God that way? Do we trust the person and not put all of our trust in the results? Do you trust God that you would be willing to let go and fall knowing that He's going to catch you? Do you trust God that much? So we must believe, we must trust, and then we must commit. We must commit. James chapter 2, verse 26, where it says this, "For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead." Earlier in the verse, James says, hey, you say you have faith and I have works, that's great. You show me works without faith, and I'll show you my faith by what I do. Faith requires us to commit to an action. It requires us to commit to an action. And so, I believe in the chair. It will support me. I have shown that I trust it, that it's sturdy. But how do I live out that faith? How do I put it into action? Well, I go sit in it. Thank you, thank you. I'll be here all week. But folks, this is where trust plays out. We can say we believe and trust all we want to, but if we're not willing to put the rubber to the road, then it's nothing. It's nothing. We have to be willing to commit to what God is calling us to do. Commit to Him. Turn it over to Him and act on it. And the way we do that is we do what He tells us to do. We go where He tells us to go. We say what He tells us to say. We talk to who He tells us to talk to. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the biggest reason the world doesn't buy in to the church? Because what we say and what we do are two different things. It doesn't match up. We can say we love people, but by our actions we say we don't. And it is true, actions speak louder than words. Actions speak louder than words. And so the world is looking at us and saying, well, they're not loving people. They don't have hope. They don't have peace. Why should I trust God? Look at how they treat each other. Look at how they gossip and fight. And so the world is turned off from the church. And they're turned off from God, which is worse. We need to commit to our faith. We need to act on it. We need to believe, we need to trust, and we need to act. So does this describe your faith? If not, what component is missing? Are you struggling with the belief part? Are you struggling with the trust part? Are you struggling with the commitment part? Or are you struggling with all three? What is it? Choose today to live in faith as defined above. God has called us to stand on and thrive with Jesus. To do this, we must stand on Jesus' foundation using the three foundational gifts of faith, hope, and love. It is a choice that we must make each and every second of each and every day. Remember, the three work together. You cannot take one away from the others. If you love someone, you will have faith in them. If you have faith in that person, you will have hope in them as well. Hope and faith will always lead to deeper love. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a relationship with God. And these three foundational gifts apply to our relationship with God as well as our relationship to each other. But we need to use these three to stand and thrive. Remember our story at the beginning? The child had faith that his father would come for him. He was confident that his dad would find him and use that confidence to reassure the other children. He knew his father loved him and would never give up. Do we have this kind of faith, hope, and love in Jesus? Now is the time to start standing and thriving with Jesus. So as we come to our invitation, I have two questions for you. First of all, do you know Jesus? Do you have a relationship with Jesus? There's two reasons why these three foundational gifts are not present in your life. The first is that you're saved, you know Christ, you're in a relationship with Him, but you've allowed the world to interfere. And so there's sin in your life that needs to be cleared out. And so today is the day to do that. Get right before God. Say, God, I am so sorry. I have created this false image. I have this false hope. I am not trusting you like I should. I am not following through on my faith. I'm not living in true hope. I don't love like you want me to. And you need to confess that and get right with Him. And then start doing those things. But the second reason they're not present in your life, you don't know Him at all. Hey, you may have walked an aisle, prayed a prayer, and been baptized. But if you don't know Jesus, and these three things are not striving to be present in your life, there's a really good chance you don't know Him at all. Now is the time to get to know Him. God loves you. He sent His Son Jesus to prove that. He died on a cross, was buried, and rose again so that we could have a relationship with Him. And He wants to have that relationship. Now is the time to have that relationship.